point in time, we'll call the July meeting of the Wood County Board of Supervisors to order. I would ask the clerk to please take roll, and I know she's been working on that for the last 5 minutes. Got that accomplished. And then I was just telling Supervisor Zerflu, typically I probably don't read the top of the agenda, and as I looked at it the other day, I said, uh-oh, I'm doing the invocation. And then the clerk reminded me, or I would have showed up this morning and been totally winging it. So with that, I guess I'd ask the body to please rise and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I often or typically don't get to pontificate on anything because I'm sitting in that chair and I just have to call for the motions and the votes. But being called upon to do the invocation, I'm going to take a little bit of liberty here today. And once again, just 2 weeks ago, we celebrated the birth of our nation. We should take time to pause and reflect upon the events that have transpired over those last 240 plus years. And when I hear in the press on an almost daily basis that we're in the toughest political times this nation has ever faced, I tend to find it somewhat humorous. It's a pretty myopic view of those who haven't paid attention either throughout their lifetime, are just too young to remember, are no longer taught in school, or at the very least don't ever watch the History Channel. They've forgotten about things like the Hamilton-Burr duel, unless they happen to see the musical. The Civil War, which split a nation. World War I, the Great Depression. World War II, the Civil Rights marches of the 1960s. The Korea and Vietnam Wars. Our forefathers fought, they died, and they birthed the nation on a principled foundation. It's endured and proven to be the best and most resilient form of government ever created. The people of this country took the raw land between two gleaming oceans. With hard work, developed the most advanced society and vibrant economy this world has ever seen. There's never been a time in this nation where the leaders have not been challenged to come up with new and innovative solutions. We, this body, often face some of those challenges. We have been elected by the people to ensure the next generation, the future of this country, that they have a firm foundation on which to continue to build. With that in mind, we seek the blessings on the task before us. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with vision and impartiality. If you would please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and thanks for the patience. It gets frustrating for me when I watch all of you, whether it's at your town board meetings, whether it's your county board meetings, whether it's the state legislature, and I hear daily the government process being just torn apart. And I'm going to tell you, we face tough times every day, but when you look back historically at what this nation has faced, what our counties have faced, our towns, our municipalities, we're living in some pretty good times. With that being said, we will take action on the minutes of the previous meeting. I entertain a motion to approve, and I have one by Fire and a second by Henkel. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Any discussion? All in favor of approval, please signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries unanimously. Excusals today, we have none. Resignations today, we have none. Appointments and reappointments to the Board of Adjustment for a 3-year term, Robert Ashbeck and Trent Miner, and Mr. Bill Winch as the alternate number 1. I'd entertain a motion to that effect by Mr. Hamilton, a second by Mr. Fisher. Any discussion on those appointments? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by aye. Aye. And opposed? No, that carried unanimously. Public comment. Do we have any public comment today? If you want to come forward, introduce yourself, and the microphone is yours for up to 3 minutes. And we don't start count time when we get you turned on.
I can talk fast. Good morning. I don't know if we're on the agenda so much, but we're always in your minutes with the Wood County campus. I'm Michelle Bornke, and I am your campus administrator for UW-Marshfield Wood County. Our dean and REO asked me to stop by today to give you a quick update to Wood County this morning. Things are going well. The carpeting or the flooring is going in. The paint is up. We are looking at occupancy of the Everett Rail STEM facility July 31st and the renovated facility August 14th. As you know, this project was almost $6 million, and $1 million coming from the city of Marshfield, and $1 million was coming allocated by the Wood County Board. So thank you on behalf of all of us at the campus. We really appreciate it and your support, as well as our UW Commission. And you are all invited to our groundbreaking, excuse me, we already did that part. The ribbon cutting, classes will start September 5th, and the ribbon cutting will be Tuesday, the 12th at 5 p.m. We'll meet out in front of the building, and then we'll proceed inside with tours and refreshments. So again, September 12th, you're all invited, and I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Any further public comment? Any further public comment? Yes, ma'am. Takes us to page 7 in your packet, which are the referrals for July. There were 5 of those went to the appropriate committees and or people. As we move towards the WCA conference and convention, they'll be rolling out their entire platform over the next few weeks. So I think you want to get it there. Before I start the executive committee minutes today, at about page 35, we start with a couple of resolutions that deal with some large financing issues. When we get to that point in the agenda, instead of having to do it now or later, I'm going to have a presentation done in relation to what the executive committee heard prior to bringing a motion to the floor in any respect and having any votes on those issues. So we will do that prior to page 35. We also have a special order of business, the Park and Forestry annual report with Chad Schooley, and a river block update, if I don't forget, with Ruben, who sat here the entire meeting last time. So somebody let me know or kick me if I don't remember that. All right, let's get into the packet then. Page 8 of your packet is the executive committee meeting minutes of Tuesday, June 6th. And those are on 8, 9, 10, and 11. Supervisor Clendenny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 9 of the June meeting of the Executive Committee, the Wisconsin retirement system, is that all fixed? Is that going good now? I see it was not brought up at the last meeting we had of the Executive Committee, and it indicated in there that there would be something moving to our next meeting. So the Wisconsin Retirement Fund, if somebody could tell me about that?
Do I have Supervisor Wagner or somebody here from that department who can, whether it be finance or HR, to update us on where we are in that process?
I'd like Mike to address that if he would. We had understood they were waiting for some information from WRS, but I think Mike has a different take on it.
I can only address part of it. I don't know if the whole process is done as far as reconciling 2016, but the reconciliation in our accounts hasn't been finalized yet. We had a large credit that we took in February of 17 related to 16, and then we made an additional payment with the June payment of about $40,000. So between those two, there's a net of about $9,000 as far as that I'm pretty certain is related to the reconciliation on 2016.
Is it fair to say that we're working on that reconciliation to pull that all together? That is not the answer.
That's right. I guess Supervisor Wagner, the reconciliation is going on internally, or is it going on with WRS? Which one are you talking about?
I'm just looking at what's happened in the general ledger, the financial records that I maintain. And so I've been looking at that because, again, it was a little bit of a concern during the audit, is why it was brought up by the executive committee. And the reconciliation with ETF, the board that administers the retirement system, had an initial reconciliation that I think resulted in the $31,000 credit. And then we sent in a supplemental data from 2016. We were waiting to hear from that. I don't know what communication has been between ETF and Human Resources, but in the general ledger, with the June payment, we paid an additional $40,000. So right now, the account has a variance of about $4,500. And so it's not as big as it was, but it's still something that needs to be addressed. And so as far as my records, that hasn't happened yet.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Wade.
There's nobody here from HR that can direct us on where they're going with that, is there?
Okay, I guarantee that we'll get an email update out to all the board supervisors today on the status related to the question. And that was through page 11. Anybody have any? Supervisor Clendenin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 10, the second paragraph here, this is also of the June meeting. It says Wagner requested that the resolutions on borrowing, the one that we're going to have later on here, be postponed. I find that disappointing as the fact that if things don't happen at this meeting or by the end of July, that does not help our bonding situation. Well, what was the reason, and it's not listed here, for postponing those resolutions? And my understanding is one of those resolutions were for the full amount to the highway, department, in which it was the 4.7 rounding it off. But now it comes back 2.5. Was that to change that resolution and make a new resolution? Why was it postponed?
Supervisor Wagner? Sure. Basically, it was postponed because I had no idea what was in it. And that basically, I wanted to take a look at it. The other thing that I was upset about was that it seemed to contain just a conglomeration of everything. And this board has been very, very adamant about getting a control and containment on the borrowing. If you recall, the sum of those two resolutions was about $9.7 million. And I didn't feel that that was something that was palatable to the board, and we needed to work up a plan and a recommendation to the board about where that plan would go. And that's what you'll be hearing later on today. I was not in favor of bringing the board something I knew they were adamantly opposed to. And highway had nothing to do with it. And Mr. Clendenin, I know you're opposed to it, but I know the rest of the board would have been too.
All right, we're still on the, Mr.
I thank you for knowing me.
Any other questions on pages 8 through 11? All right, page 12 of the packet, Tuesday, July 11th, Executive Committee meeting. Page 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Rosa.
Say something about.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'll notice, the minutes of the last executive committee meeting are not signed because we had a late executive committee meeting. There was concern that we wouldn't get them in the minutes, in the county board packet fast enough, and I had to work the next day, so I didn't have a chance to look at them. And so I will take a look at these before they come to the executive committee next meeting, but they're in there kind of unedited, unapproved, everything, so that'll happen. But we felt it was more important for the board to see these minutes in their rough draft for this meeting. Thank you.
Supervisor Clendenin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 12, the bottom paragraph, which relates to the educational reimbursement. That was brought up at the last meeting, and added before the vote, it was asked for, is there any discussion on it? I had some discussion. I wanted somebody on the executive committee, somebody to explain just exactly where this is in the handbook. And the chairman of the committee said that Mr. Kraft was present at this time and that he would address that issue. So Mr. Kraft said to me, because I asked a question, he says, I'll meet you out in the hall afterwards. Well, I know that's never a good thing, especially when somebody who said, I'll meet you in the alley after the meeting and explain to you, or something like that. I wasn't given an explanation, and the vote was still taken. At the chairman's request for Mr. Kraft to do it. And so I was upset about it, so I waited out in the hall. Mr. Kraft never showed up. So I sent him an email. In a very short email, he sent me back a lengthy one in which all the times that this was given out. And I had explained at the meeting that we in the Health and Human Services Committee had asked for a same request, and it was said, it's not in the handbook, we can't do it. And then also in the Judicial and Legislative Committee, we had a request for an educational reimbursement. And it was indicated that really there's nothing in the handbook that says that the committee could do this. So then I went to Peter Casanos, and he gave me a caption of what he thought and what he could do. And in it, I do have a motion, and I would like to read that motion. If I may read the motion. I know at the last meeting we weren't allowed to read things, but I'm not that smart. I have to read my motion. I move that the educational reimbursement for Amy Culp of, I have here $3,475.29, or I'm going to say slash, that was approved at the executive committee at their recent meeting be denied.
Well, you have Mr. Clendenny who made a motion. Is there a second to it?
I set off a fire alarm.
You're kidding me. Let's leave.
Evacuate unless otherwise told.
Where's the sheriff? What do we need to do? Where's our emergency?
Hey, he's moving already. I think we ought to leave with him.
So back to page 12, where I have a motion by Supervisor Clendenny from the floor to deny a tuition reimbursement. I had a second by Supervisor Winch, I believe. Bill, is that correct? Yeah, it happened right when the buzzer was going off. So a second by Supervisor Winch. Discussion on the motion. Discussion on the motion. Any Supervisor Clendenny?
Yes, I'd like to discuss this. Motion, of course. One of the things is it's not the recipient of this. It's what it's causing in this courthouse with a morale problem. I know that's probably none of my business. I'm not on with HR or anything like that. But being a former union president, I hear a lot of these complaints. And due to the fact that in the health department, there was a good reason, Health and Human Service, there was a good reason for somebody, and it was denied. And then I asked for an explanation at the executive committee and could not get it. There's something I believe is wrong here. I don't think the executive committee has the power to overextend and allow somebody this education that is a department head. You're at the top. What can we only do is educate you more so you either get more money or you find a better job that pays you. So that's why I would hope you people would, and I'm willing to at the Judicial and Legislative Committee, because it's the Rules Committee, set some rules and regulations for that are clear. Thank you.
Further discussion. Supervisor Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Getting back to Supervisor Clendenny at the Health and Human Services, I know what he's talking about. We were part of that. We were unclear. That's why we denied that request at our meeting. The request that I would have to the board today is, are these monies that were spent for education, is it for a continuing education or for basic education? That is one of the questions I'd like cleared up.
Supervisor Wagner.
Yeah, I'll address Mr. Kramer's concern, because that's one of mine also, that the policy says that we support the policy says only very vaguely that we support education of our employees, or advancement of our employees, I think it says. It is very vague. It doesn't tell what's going on or what's eligible, what isn't eligible. We want a policy. I've asked the HR director to develop a policy as soon as possible. He wants to do it within the context of the revision to the personnel policy handbook, which we will be seeing in September. I believe we'll be seeing it at that time. One thing that I need to address to Mr. Clendenny is that this has been brought to this board 3 times before, and each time the board has ratified it. Basically, if the board wants to, that's a sort of a de facto policy. The reason I supported it this last time was because I felt that the board, by ratifying it previously, had made a promise. The person had acted upon that promise, and now we were seeking to renege on that promise. I felt that we were obligated to continue with what we had promised before. And by the way, not only had we promised it, the recipient had acted upon it and would have incurred a detriment by doing so. But if we had reneged on it. So it was done in good faith, and I felt that was the case. Now, do I agree with Mr. Clendenny that there needs to be rules and regulations? Of course I do. I feel that HR has to come up with this, and they have to come up with it pretty damn quick. And I will be working on that as I have. So that's where I want to go. Now I think I'm going to be cross-examined by Mr. Clendenny again. So thank you for the floor.
Hold it just a second. Let me make sure nobody else wants to speak to this. Supervisor Hinkle, then Supervisor Lahad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the only fair way to deal with this is to pay for what has been incurred and to change things or clarify things quickly. That being said, it would not be inappropriate for this body to place a moratorium on anyone incurring any more debts for education until this policy is clarified. But to say, no, we're not going to pay something after we had implied we would is not correct. Thank you.
Supervisor Lahad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to add a side note here I don't really have a dog in this fight. I just think that given the serious financial discussions we're going to have later, this, to me, is a prime example of how we frivolously waste money in this county. For those who suggest that government should be run like business, I can tell you that educational reimbursement in general industry has been gone for a decade.
That's not true.
We're behind the times.
That's not true.
Anybody else before I go back to Supervisor Curry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the question I have, we've kind of skirted around this issue. Right now, I take it there is no written policy that says there's reimbursement. I know we've done it before. Different committees have done it, but it doesn't exist. I think probably if if Amy was promised this money, it probably should be paid. But I agree with Supervisor Hinkle. The second motion should be that we stop any more until we do either develop a policy or say we're not going to do this anymore.
I'm waiting to see if anybody else puts their hand up though before I get to this. Another bill. Supervisor Lightfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just taking notes as this discussion ensued, if the executive committee promised reimbursement, but they had no authority to do that, then I can't see us following through with that. The promise wasn't valid.
I don't know. This is the point where the executive committee is where that decision is always made, just from that point. All right, anybody else? Supervisor Clendenny.
Yes, from that very chair where you sit right now, Supervisor Wagner, these same promises were made all 3 times. First time it's in the handbook. That's what somebody showed me when it's in the handbook. Nobody showed me where it was in the handbook. I went to different people. I went to court counsel again and other people outside of the courthouse. Show me where this is, and it's not. So the next time it come up, I did it again. Oh, it's in the handbook. We're going to be revising that. So there is no intent whatsoever, and I cannot believe that 2 supervisors that were involved in a request for educational at a committee level on the executive board approved this after in their own committee they didn't think it was right. I'm not asking for it all to be back, just what was promised this last time.
And I don't say we should deny any more in the future. Do what the handbook says. I would hate to be sitting in Amy's spot right now in this room saying, you know, what happened here? Why wasn't somebody doing something right? And it goes back to the health and to the HR department. It's the fact that every time we got something they didn't do or get done, and I'm kind of sick of it. And this is another example.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Supervisor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to correct one thing. Supervisor Mahan said that private industries are not supporting education of employees anymore, and in a way that's not true. It may be in some industries, but I know in my industry we still get educational reimbursement for various degrees and things, and so there is some of that going on. The thing that I hope happens, and I agree with Supervisor Clendenning, it's not clear in the handbook. You know, I mean, I think you made the comment, Chairman Plemmel, at the thing is if it doesn't say we can't do it, we can do it. And that was kind of an interesting comment because I thought, oh, you know, that really could be far-reaching. And so the thing that we do in my industry is if the organization pays for educational reimbursement, and then that employee leaves within X number of months, they have to pay that money back. So if we give them $5,000 to get a master's degree or, you know, whatever, and they leave within 2 years, they have to pay that money back. So as we move through, and I agree with Supervisor Clinton, the verbiage in the handbook has got to be more clear. Brandon and I sat down for many minutes one time and looked at exactly what it said, and it's got to be clearer. But I hope things like that are taken into consideration because there is a concern. You pay for somebody's master's degree and they go to the next county to a job that pays them $15,000 more or something. So hopefully these are the details that'll be worked out because the devil's always in the details.
Further discussion? All right, so the motion and second is to deny. So an affirmative vote is to deny that. All right? I ask us to, I think the discussion is finished, if we go to the board. Okay? Then please vote.
Doesn't say.
No, it doesn't say vote yet.
And now we're last, thank you.
We're all out on the
Okay. You have to make us present.
Yeah, you gotta make those people present.
Okay, step in.
Okay.
Okay. Now can we move? Yep. Okay.
Okay, that motion passed. That reimbursement at this point is denied. So wanted to make that clear before the vote. So we also look at the policy to clear that up. I didn't want to weigh in prior to the vote. These have always been looked at on an individual basis. A clearer policy would certainly help, but it's always been related to the job. But that motion passed 11-8. All right, page. Does that take us through page 15? Are there any other questions through page 15? Okay, page 16, the Executive Committee Subcommittee on River Block and the Annex 16 and 17. Their minutes from Friday, June 30th on 18 and 19. Monthly letter of comments from maintenance from Ruben on 20. Monthly letter from the clerk on 21. Safety and risk management, 22 and 3. The Human Resources monthly letter of comment begins on page 24 and runs through 28, 24 through 28. Human Resources monthly letter of comments from June on 29 through 33. 29 to 33. Brings me to 34 in the packet, and this is a resolution dealing with stale-dated checks.
This will be Resolution 17-7-1 to cancel stale-dated checks as recommended by the auditors. Said checks from county general account as per office of the county treasurer. Fiscal note, as per resolution, total to be canceled is $931.10.
Motion by Hamilton, second by Lakeman. Any discussion on the resolution? Any discussion on the resolution? All right, please vote. There we go.
I didn't need to abstain. Yes.
All right, Mr. Glendining's vote will be recorded as a yes. That resolution passed 18-1. It brings us to what would be the start of a number of resolutions dealing with long-term debt, bonding, and the direction the county is going. We had a long presentation at the executive committee meeting. A number of supervisors were there, but I think it's imperative due to the scope and nature of these resolutions and in the interest of having every member of this board totally understand what the process might be and where they're going, that we have an order of business here, an explanation of what these are. At the end of that explanation, when you have a full understanding, we'll bring a motion to the floor in whatever regard is needed. And for Supervisor Wagner. Thank you. And I'm not sure if Supervisor Wagner, Supervisor Martin is here, Joe Murray, one of our financial advisors here in respect to the bonding issues we have done in the past from Springstead. So we'll have Supervisor Wagner and some expertise here to answer any questions that may be directly related to those issues. Supervisor Wagner?
Okay, thanks a lot. We had a little preview of what we did and why we did it when Mr. Clendenny asked about why we pulled those original resolutions. Basically, one of the biggest complaints I've had from the supervisors is that we don't really have a plan. Borrowing is sort of willy-nilly, and it sort of takes place in an unstructured fashion. So what they asked for was some way of trying to get a handle on borrowing and trying to set it up so that we could actually plan our borrowing and plan how much debt we intend to incur and put a limit on it for some time in the future. So that's what we tried to do. And this is a composite of two presentations that came before the executive committee, and it's an idea that we have, and they wanted to bring it to you and see if you could approve this or something similar to it. So basically the idea is to set a plan. And here's where we started. Here's what the goals we started with. To determine the current situation concerning borrow and levy for debt service in 2018, review the impact of the selected borrowing amounts on the levy for debt service, and set recommended borrowing limit for capital improvements for county board approval. This is not the executive committee acting independently. We're bringing you a suggestion for you to approve. Then the last thing was we'll take that findings and recommendations of the department heads to assist them in their budget preparation. And this is one of the reasons we want to get them started on this thing. Now, why is capital improvement funding? Now, we're only dealing with capital improvements. We're not dealing with the rest of the county budget right now. Capital improvements is important for a really, really strange reason, and I'll show you what that is. If you look at what's going on, you can probably see the figures. You can see the light tan numbers and the blue numbers. But as you know, the Wisconsin statutes impose a limit on the property levy, limit on property tax levies by cities, towns, villages, and counties. We're limited. That's the one they put a limit on. But they don't put any limit on the debt service. And this is really, this is really sort of backwards, because what it does, it incentivizes us to borrow. Because we don't have the money, we can't borrow money to operate the county. But we can spend operating money on capital improvements. But if we need that all for operations, there's nothing left over for capital improvements, and we're forced into borrowing. So that's why it's important. And currently, you'll see that out of our $5.09 per thousand levy limit, or levy that we put out there, we're giving $4.55 per thousand to operations and 54 cents per thousand for debt service. The amount we're spending on debt service is $2,575,000, but the amount we're raising for operations is $21,423 and change. Okay? So that's why this is important, because we are going to be, it looks like all of our capital improvements in the future, or the greatest portion of our capital improvements in the future, are going to come from issuance of bonds. Because there just isn't enough operating levy, and the limit on us of what we can levy for operations is set by the state. Basically, we're limited to only the amount we can get off of new construction. That's the only increase we can get, and it comes out to about somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 a year in increase that we can spend on operations. So that's one of the big differences. How do we fund them? Well, we can fund capital improvements out of 3 different ways. We can fund them, like I mentioned, out of the general tax levy, or we can fund them out of what we call the other, and that's funds, grants, donations, and other non-lapsing funds. But the biggest portion of it comes out of the tax levy debt service that's at $2.5 million that we stated a minute ago. We're only going to concern ourselves today with that middle bucket, and the tax levy for capital improvements. Here's what we're at in current debt service. Here's what we're at. We've got hanging out there, we've got Edgewater, we've got radio towers, we've got 3 highway project borrowings that we've done. We've got the STEM project that was mentioned just a little while ago, and we've got Riverwalk. Our total outstanding indebtedness is $21,840,000. And that's, I'm using Mike's figure, so if they're wrong, yell at him. Okay. But anyway, the point is that's what we've got outstanding. The debt service varies because of the interest rate, and as well as the unpaid balance. So you'll see that the remaining annual debt service varies. Well, like on the Edgewater, it will run from $347,000 to $341,000 per year, and some change. So that's a little bit different. Anyway, but when we asked the department heads to put together their capital requests for this year, well, they did. They put together, they got this book, and we got them in 5 years. This is a 5-year operating plan. And what they requested from the levy, from the general operating levy, $3,058,000. $3,058,000. They requested from debt another $4,746,000, and from grants, loans, and whatever, $1,600,000, $1,672,000. What's available? Well, Mike doesn't think we're going to have any spare levy available, so we set that to 0. So basically, we're short that $3,058,000 for the amount that they requested in levy. And if we set borrowing limit, we set it arbitrarily here at $3.5 million. That would leave a deficit of about $1.2 million. And we just don't. If you get the grant, you get the project. If you don't get the grant, you don't get the project. If you get the loans, you get the donations, you get the project. If you don't get the donations, you don't get the project. So we set that as exactly the same. So the total requests were $9,477,000, almost $9.5 million, which is remarkably close to what Mike was putting into the first set of resolutions that I asked him to go back and take a look at. The total shortfall, if we did use a baseline borrowing of $3,500,000, the total shortfall is about $4,300,000. What I don't think people understand is that the capital improvement plan goes for 5 years. So we don't have to fund everything within the first year. So we can spread it out over a period of time. And this is what you department chairman and you committee chairman are going to have to look at with the department requesting your budget, is what can you do? But what we tried to do is set a baseline. And here's what was suggested to us as a baseline. We took a number and we cut it back from 4 million to 2.5 as the absolute lowest possible amount that we could possibly give to highways in any year. And we took the non-highway projects that the county departments need and set that at 1 million and came up with a baseline of 3.5 million. But there's some more to it, and you'll find that in a minute. Anyway, but this is our annual debt service that we've got for all of these. I think the $1,700,000 annual debt service for highway is all 3 borrowings that we've done, and it's not the individual borrowings that you see on the sheet that was handed out. Highways account for the largest portion of our debt because that's basically what we do as a county. We do highways. That's our biggest responsibility. That then, although I think the biggest chunk of the budget, I think 42% of the budget is health and human services. But as far as capital goes, it's probably highway. I should have meant that in current debt, it's capital projects, not in total spending. Operations, health and human services outstrips them beautifully. So anyway. And basically, at this point, the only thing important about this slide is highway accounts for about somewhere around 56% of our current debt service. That's in the raw numbers. Now, we've been given numbers that are on your desk that show that we get back a portion of the interest on that. That's not taken into account here because that was not presented to us. We just found out about that today. So we came up with that baseline of about $3.5 million as the absolute lowest amount that we should be borrowing per year. And how do we get to 5.25? Well, there's the 2.5 for highway, there's $1 million for non-highway, but we have 2 debt issues with the state trust fund hanging out there that need to be paid in 2018. And those amount to that refinancing is $1,750,000. That was $1 million for this year's capital improvements that you approved in the budget last year, that we would take out a long-term or short-term borrowing for that, and $750,000 for relocation of the dispatch center and the shared data center. Those two have to be refinanced. And basically, if we don't refinance them, that's such a short term, I think the actual borrowing, the actual debt service on it will be approximately $600,000 by itself, meaning that we'll have to levy for that $600,000 if we do no other borrowing at all, because this is something we've already incurred. Okay? And if we do borrow that, if we do go on borrowing, what's our plan, and how will those various plans affect the citizens of Wood County? How will it affect the taxes for the citizens, and how will it affect our borrowing limit that the state imposes upon us already? Well, if we went to, I originally did this at 5.5 million and had Mike do up the figures. And you'll see up at the top right, in very small print, that is currently the levy for, or the levy rate for debt service is 59 cents per $1,000 in valuation. If this went through at this rate, it would raise it just about 11 cents. It would raise it to 70 cents per $1,000. Over the period of years, it would raise it up to a high, I think, of 72.9 cents. And then it would start decreasing from there and go back down
by 2027, it would go back down to 12 cents. That's off of this one. Now, if you are not doing any other borrowing, but we know that borrowing's in our future because levy limits aren't going away. They're going to stay. But that's what we did at 5.5. At 6.0, it would raise it 12 cents, and at 7 million, it would raise it 15 cents. So that's what it would be. So what they, given the choice of where we wanted to go on this for a long-term plan, the executive committee recommended we minimize the impact to the greatest extent possible by holding borrowing to the baseline plus the amount necessary to refinance the short-term debt of $1.75 million. That was just to minimize the debt. That's where those numbers came from, and that's what we agreed upon to present to you for your consideration. Now, I also hear from supervisors that we're spending ourselves into bankruptcy and we're beyond all reason in our borrowing, and that's not exactly true. According to the state, our debt limit is $243,502,000. That's 5% of our total equalized value, and that was as of December 31st, 2016. Our approximate current debt, as we showed you earlier, is $21,840,000. Right now, we are at 8.97% of our debt limit. 8.97%. If we borrowed $5.5 million a year, we would go up, we'd bring it up to 11.23. If we borrowed 6, it would bring it up to 11.43. And if we proposed $7 million, it would bring it up to 11.84. That's the impact of what we're doing. That's the impact on the borrowing limit, and that's the impact on the tax levy for debt service. Quite frankly, I don't see any way around having to borrow. I just don't see how we can do it. In some regards, the days of pay as you go are over. They're done because we just don't have the wherewithal to do it. We have salaries to consider. We have health benefits to consider. We have general operating costs themselves to consider. And we basically, over the years, those things have grown so much that it eats up the total amount of operational levy that we can get. And we have to find a different source of money to do this. And that's what we're after. I know a lot of you don't like borrowing, but there's not much we can do about it. This is almost like managing your personal finances. Very few of us have the money to go out and buy a new car for cash. We certainly, but very few of us in this room anyway, have the wherewithal to go out and buy a new home for cash. We have to borrow at some time to do that. And the management and the control of debt, the responsible control of debt, is a tool that we use and we must use to keep moving forward. Basically, the goal that we started, the goal that I wanted to get, and I recommended this to the committee, was that we reach what they call a steady state of borrowing in 6 years, where we can borrow a set amount annually to responsibly fund our capital needs without an increase in levy. And the guy from PFM was showing us what that would look like. You see where that line flattens out? You look at the green lines on the right-hand side of the graph. That's the so-called steady state. By the way, the gray area down there, let me put a light on that so we can see what's going on. Let's see. This area right down here in gray, that's where we're at right now. That's where we're at right now. If no other borrowing takes place at all, that's where we're at. That's our existing debt. If we came in at at a minimum baseline of $3.5 million a year, the cost of it would go up and up, there would be a spike up here, and then because of the structure of the debt, and then it would start to come down, and we would reach a steady state where we would still be borrowing $3.5 million a year, but would be paying off at least that much, so that there would be absolutely no impact on taxes whatsoever. Our problem is we have been so conservative right here. We've been so conservative in this area that it's going to be a long mountain to climb. It's going to take us 6 years before we start paying off enough debt till we start reaching this steady state. Now there's another point. If we're talking about a fixed amount of borrowing per year, we're talking about doing some fixed amount of borrowing per year. But what about if something big comes up, if an emergency comes up, or if we have an opportunity for a larger project that will save the county operating funds and make it very cost effective to do. Let's say we have to have a project of $10 million. Well, we call those generational projects. And there is a way that could happen. It can happen, but it'll take us a little longer. It'll take us a little longer to climb that mountain, like this. But once we get there, basically we're dealing with a higher number that we could borrow without raising taxes. But this can account for it. Now these graphs will vary depending on how the bond issues are structured and done. But it can be done. And I know it can be done because the city of Marshfield is doing it. They call us the Dukes of Debt. Yeah, we are, because we do a lot of this stuff. But our whole idea was to, I guess until just recently, I think with the library project, well, the fire department was the best example. We had saved up enough debt service, enough leeway in the debt, where we basically didn't have to raise the taxes to pay for an $8 million fire station. We did that with the amount that we had on there, with the levy we had on hand. And basically, I think the library was a different one. I think we ended up levying something for the library. But again, the idea was to do a generational project once every 5, 6, or 7 years and get it done. We can do the same thing, and we have the ability to do that. So you wanted a plan. Here's a plan. It's not perfect. It doesn't meet all your concerns, but it's something, and it's something we can build on, it's something we can start on. And basically, I'm going to turn it over to Mike now. Oh, well, let me review that. The important takeaways I want you to have from this is, 1, we can no longer afford to pay as you go. Number 2, we need to set limits on borrowing. We need to prioritize our projects, and we need to set goals for the future. And that's what we're trying to do here. And basically, I'm going to ask Mike to take over from here and fill in anything that I might have left out and go from there. Mike?
Thank you, Supervisor Wagner. Just one clarification. Supervisor Wagner said that one schedule he got from me, and if it was wrong, it was on me, and that one schedule was wrong. The only thing that excluded was the $1 3/4 million state trust fund loan. The $21.8 million that I show as our current debt, that was our current debt as of 12/31/16. Since then, in January and February, we borrowed the $1 3/4 million. But the intent and part of the rationale as far as not including on that schedule, when we took it out, it was always intended to be refinanced with longer term and with lower cost borrowing through the competitive marketplace. We've got pretty good interest rates with the state trust fund loan at 3%, but I borrowed it only over a 5-year period. So as Supervisor Wagner said, the debt service on that, if we don't refinance it, is fairly steep. If we don't refinance the state trust fund loan, it's going to add 8 cents to the tax rate just on its own. If we refinance it, likely that refinancing portion will only be 4 cents. So we save like 4 cents on the tax rate if we go with the refinancing. Longer term, so we're not saving 50%, but we are smoothing out the tax rate to a more comfortable level. But I'm just here probably just to answer any questions that you may have as far as why did we reach a point where we can't borrow pay as you go. And I certainly concur with Supervisor Wagner that we used to fund approximately $600,000-$700,000 a year out of our operating levy. We didn't borrow for squad cars or other equipment, things like that, other vehicles. We were able to fund it through our operating levy. And our tax rate for debt service dropped all the way down to 10 cents for debt service. That was its low point. But as Supervisor Wagner said, with the levy limits, we've been squeezed more and more. I put something in front of the exec committee and the department head group that the decisions on wages and health insurance alone are going to be in the neighborhood of close to $2 million for 2018. With the amount that we're allowed with the net new construction for 2017 budget, the net new construction generated only a little over $200,000. I don't know that there's going to be anything greater as far as net new construction. There are things happening in Wood County, but I got a feeling it's going to be in that same neighborhood of about $200,000. So you just talk about those operating costs of nearly $2 million and revenue from our operating levy of $200,000. That's a gap of $1.8 million. And so it sets us up in the 2018 budget with some heavy challenges. If we don't go through with the borrowing, we can't do any capital at all. I don't even know how we fund the squad cars of about $230,000, $240,000 a year. We don't like to long-term borrow for squad cars, but it is possible to roll it into longer live asset funding where we could do that. So that's the situation we are in, and if it's with the pleasure of the chair, I can answer any questions.
Supervisor Clendenny had his hand up first, and Supervisor Rosa.
Thank you. I want to talk about the sales tax. You know, when a constituent comes up and says, you guys are borrowing too much money, you're spending too much money, I can't give them this long lingo and hand them this and say, well, this is the way we're doing things. I have a very simple mind myself. We're going to vote on that. But one of the things is that sales tax. I'd like you to address that. When we first got sales tax in, went, half of the sales tax had to go to offset the levy limits, the levy. Now, what about the other half, and how much is that? And is there any prediction in here about, the sales tax?
Thanks. It's true. When we passed the ordinance to impose the 0.5% sales tax, the ordinance said that half of the anticipated sales tax has to go to direct property tax relief, and we did that. And we were.
We do that, right?
Not anymore. Not anymore. And let me explain. When we implemented that, we were under the tax rate freeze of about $4.35, whatever it was at that time, of an operating tax rate freeze. So when our equalized value grew, our ability to generate new operating levy also grew. And there was times where that was 6, 7, 8%, that we were able to generate more operating levy. But each budget year that we were under the tax rate freeze, we did computations to verify that we're still in compliance with the ordinance. We would take approximately, say the sales tax was $5.5 million, anticipated, because we would look at the history. And so we would take $2.75 million of that anticipated $5.5 million and do it as a reduction of our operating levy that we could do. And we continued to do that from year one until we went under the tax levy freeze as opposed to the tax rate freeze. The tax levy freeze said you can only increase your levy for net new construction. What happened then is with that, we dropped under those original ceilings as far as the operating tax rate less half of the sales tax. So right now, our tax rate is less than what it would have been if we had the tax rate freeze less half of the sales tax. So we will comply with our ordinance if it became applicable in the future. We were hurt in 2016, particularly under sales tax, because not only did it not grow like we anticipated, but there was an audit that we had to pay back the Department of Revenue for our share of the results of this audit, which was about $800,000.
Yeah, let me just add, basically what we're trying to do today, and what Mike needs us to do sometime in the near future, is get the initial resolutions for borrowing for capital projects agreed upon some way, somehow by this body. What Mr. Clendenning addressed is really appropriately addressed when we bring the total budget, and we can look and see where that sales tax money was applied and how it was applied, because if I'm not mistaken, it's the total levy goes out and then you apply the sales tax. I think that's what you said, right?
Comply with that ordinance?
Yeah.
Again, we always check that we're in compliance. We always check that we are in compliance with the lower of the two. If the lower of the two was the tax rate less the sales tax, we will comply with that. But right now, the lower of the two is the tax rate limit, or tax levy limit, which limits our amount of operating levy we can generate.
Supervisor Rosa. We'll be visiting that again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions. I do agree that we've not used debt very wisely in this county over the years, and I'm glad to see that we're thinking ahead about return on investments of capital projects and what makes more sense in the big picture. But the one thing that I'd like to address is the amount of property that the county owns. I think that if we can unload some of the property that we own, that will put us in a better financial, and I hope that we make that a part of this big discussion, because we've got some property now to unload now that we've consolidated things. We've got those CBRF buildings in Marshfield that I'd like to see us get rid of, and I think that that will help our overall financial situation if we can get rid of, there's that property across the highway department that we need to talk about, and that needs to be part of this big discussion, because I think that will help our overall financial situation.
Are there additional questions of either of the gentlemen up here at this point in time? Any additional questions as to the mechanism? Supervisor Lynch?
Thank you. I'm a little confused with some of your numbers here. You got a request coming in for $9.4 million. Your resolution is asking to borrow $1 million.
That's yeah, and that's
We're
over
going
the
to par
years.
that down.
And
But if we need 9 and we're only financing 1, and then you're also advocating that we're going to borrow, say, $5 million, you're going to add that to what we already exist, that runs us up to $27 million of debt. And then you're contending that we're going to borrow an average of another 3.5, that's going to run it up to 31.3, $31,300,000.
Go ahead, Mike.
That was the original resolutions that I put forward to the executive committee, and they were tabled in June because they hadn't really considered what was part of that 9.6 million. And what that reflected was the request from the departments of the 4.7 million of debt, and they also said $3 million that would be funded with levy. So that's where I originally came up with the 9.6 million. Well, not exactly. It was 3 million plus the 4.7 of 2018 capital. Also in the 9.6 was refinancing of the 1.75 million state trust fund loan.
So if I can simplify this, Supervisor, in that big number, that's kind of like my kid's Christmas list.
Right.
And then after I look at it, I say, you're not getting all those presents. And then I come up with a different number.
Needs and wants.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, another question I got is that roughly a month ago, we were told that our debt limit was 130 million. Now we're being told that it's 243.
I can answer that. It's always been closer to 250 million in the 20 years I've been here.
Thank you.
The resolutions that we had, they have specific wording in there, not to exceed amount. So when I had the 9.6 million, which is the highway, all the other capital, plus the refinancing, that amount not to exceed. If we had moved that resolution forward, it still could have been pared back dramatically. And just like these current ones also have the wording in there, not to exceed, $2.5 million for highway, $2 3/4 million for $1 million for capital, plus the $1 3/4 for refinancing.
Supervisor Clendon.
So, really, we're doing what the state did years ago, and then they have to have a constitutional amendment. We're robbing the highway fund to pay for other things, such as a road up to, what is that, hill. You know, so that's exactly what we're doing with this delay in it. It was 4.7 million, and now we had some time to think about it, so we're going to rob that we've had for 2 or 3 years already, which is very hard to get through this for, and we're going to rob that at only 2.5 million. No, we're doing just like the state, and borrowing for roads. I said in the beginning, borrowing for roads is telling the people down in Madison, don't bother sending us any road aid because we're doing it ourselves. Give it to somebody else. That's my opinion.
I tend to, yes, we looked at that and said that we thought perhaps $2.5 million was the absolute bare minimum. And I think that came from the fact that before we started on this project, I think highways had about 2.5 million in levy that they were using at that time that they essentially gave up. And so the intent was to replace that amount with debt. Again, what we're looking at is trying to minimize the amount that we had to borrow. And if we went on a plan of borrowing 5.2 or 5.3 or 5.5 a year, remember, this year and this year only do we have the burden of refinancing that 1.75 million. In the next few years, that 1.75 million that we're using for refinancing now can be thrown back to highway for their fund. So basically, what we're asking for is I'm not going to speak for the entire executive committee because I don't think they were of the same mind that I was on this. But what it is that we're asking the highway department to take a 1-year hit so we can handle this over the hump 1.75 million and then refund it in the next years and return to the plan in the next years. So, you know, you can agree or disagree with that as you wish, but that was the reasoning, that was the logic, and it was not robbing the highway fund in the same way that the state did, which was grand theft if you ask me. But anyway, I'm sorry, but that's where we're at.
Supervisor Zerflu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any way we can get that in writing, that highway will get that money back next year? It might change my vote on this matter. Thank you.
If you want to add it, if somebody wants to make a motion to approve the resolution with a proviso that the 1.75 be added in next year, that would be perfectly legitimate.
I think to answer this a little bit, you look at the request, you look what might be a palatable tax rate, and we're trying to balance that repayment with the other. The difference between, and Supervisor, for your point a little bit, it's well taken. You know, the state is bonded for highways with no structure or thought as to how they're going to repay it. You've heard that, you know, we want more borrowing, we don't want to increase the revenue sources. We've looked at increasing those revenue sources, and to your point, you're right. You know, can we handle it? The answer is maybe, but it becomes a little more detrimental to a lower tax rate. I mean, it raises taxes, so it's kind of that balance of what's palatable, what isn't, and what do we need to do to maintain it. But your thought process is right. Additional questions, conversation before we get to the resolutions? I want to make sure everybody's questions, at least on that, are answered. The structure, the process. Supervisor Roser? Then I'll go to Supervisor Kramer. I see that.
Thank you. I meant to say this when I stood up the last time because I think the public has you know, I mean, Supervisor Clendenin talks about how difficult all this is to understand, and some of us sit here with more limited big picture knowledge than others, and we talk about 4 cents and 8 cents, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows that's per thousand, right? So sometimes I think, you know, people say, oh, 4 cents, that's nothing. But when you talk about all of this in per thousand, it makes a big difference. And I just wanted to get that out so that the public understands that these numbers that we're talking about are per thousand. So if your house is worth $150,000 per thousand, all of that, just to clarify that.
No time. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, and it's good to put it in terms that people relate to.
Yes.
And these 2 resolutions you have, the reasonable guess, the impact on the tax rate, as Supervisor Wagner showed in his slides, is about 12 cents per thousand. So on a $100,000 house, it would add $12 to their tax bill. $150,000 house, $18 to their tax bill. In that 12 cents is the refinancing of the state trust fund loan. Not to overcomplicate it, but if you take that out of it, the $3.5 million out of the 5 1/4 would add about 8 cents, $8, $12 to $100,000, $150,000 house. If we don't refinance the state trust fund loan, the way it's structured, it alone is going to add the 8 cents, $8, $12 to the tax bill. So we'd be saving about $4 as far as by the refinancing alone.
Supervisor Kramer.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad to hear a lot of the more tenured board members have a lot of questions and confused, because imagine how a freshman board member like myself is trying to put my head around this. And I spent a lot of time the last 3 days on the phone with a lot of you. And I just kind of want to back up and look at where we've been to be able to know where we're going. And if I'm wrong on any of this, please correct me, because I'm trying to get my head around this. From my research and conversations, approximately 3 or 4 years ago, many of you on this board approved in all practical purposes, a 5-year, $20 million spending resolution for the highway, which is supposed to be $4 million a year. I'm rounding numbers here. We did, looking at this plan, we did 3 years of funding on that already, and we're entering the 4th year. When I look at the GTAs that are generated through the state's program and look at what we stand to lose in the year 2020 through 2022, even in 2019 already, of the dollars that we spend versus the GTA we get back, to abandon this plan now seems to me to be a wrong decision. I equate it to kind of looking at running a marathon and doing all the work and then stopping 100 yards shy of the finish line and you're just quitting. And maybe that plan wasn't perfect, maybe it was very contested, I don't know that, but it was a plan and it was approved for certain numbers. And I realized that the highways, where if they got better, it could be taken away or reduced like we're doing now. So to totally abandon it, to me, would totally abandon that strategic plan, and we harp on planning, we harp on strategic plans, but if we don't follow through, it is not a plan. Keeping that said, I do know that plans change all the time. I think we need to look at how impactful highways are, not only in our townships, in the county, but as a state, as a global. Our manufacturers in this county are vast, our agriculture has changed fast, our highways are our competitive linchpin in the world right now. We're not the only group of people in the world manufacturing goods. We're not the only group of people in the world growing corn and soybeans. But what we do have that no other country has is we have the infrastructure to move our products to the market and to the ports faster, more efficiently, more cost effectively than anybody else in the world. That is our competitive edge. That is the only reason we are where we are economy. If we lose that, our economy will get much, much worse. So when I look at that competitive edge and the logistics that we have in place, it is something that, as much as I am against adding levy, sometimes if we don't do it, it'll cost us more in the big plan. I want to give you just one example of how important this is in our local area. Many people had a dairy farm 30, 40 years ago, 50, 60 cows. We all know that's going away. But what's happening in agriculture right now is that when you lose dairy cows, you lose hay ground, you lose pasture, and that gets converted to row crops. How many people 15 years ago seen a soybean plant? Probably very, very few. Today, Wisconsin is number 12 in the United States in soybean production, and we do not have a crush plant. All of our soybeans leave on a semi-rail. Every single one of them goes somewhere. So when you look at that, that's just one little aspect of how important our infrastructure is. I agree that we need a comprehensive plan. I think that when you look at this borrowing plan, I wish I'd have seen it sooner. It takes a lot of time to digest that. I think that without that plan, we can't do a lot more. But I also hear on all these discussions about adding spending, I hear very few discussions about cutting. I think we need to look at where we cut, because there's always efficiencies to be had at every level, and I don't see any of that in these projections. I'd like to see some cuts, or where potential cuts to be made, either by department or by program. And I'll end this with, when I got on this board, I had one thing in mind that I told myself, no matter what happens or how I feel, I will always try to do one thing when I leave this boardroom. And that one thing I told myself is that whether this is not about if I win or somebody else wins, this is about what's best for the residents of Wood County. And when you vote today, whether it's for or against, I will leave this boardroom knowing that my question has always been, did the people of Wood County win today? Not did Brad Kramer win, or Lance Plenel, or Ed Wagner, but did the people of Wood County win? I think we need to seriously consider, if we don't vote this in, what is the option? What is the plan? We can't be against everything all the time if we don't have a plan to support your argument. And again, I am very much against adding levy, but sometimes it's a tough decision. I just wanted to share the comments about, how important it is, and I'm glad that I'm not the only one confused, so thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kramer. Supervisor Wagner? There will be time for cuts. The departmental budgets are going to be due, I think in August, middle of August, to the oversight committees, and it's up to the oversight committees to regulate those budgets. Those are the operating budgets. This, basically what we're telling, by setting a $1 million limit on non-highway capital improvements, we're basically telling the department heads, guess what, folks, this is not Christmas, Santa Claus is dead, and there is a limit to what we're going to borrow for that purpose. We were told, no, I was personally told, I don't know if any of the other finance committee members were told this, but I was personally told by other supervisors that we had to put some limits on people somewhere, we had to do something, we had to put a stop to this. Well, I'm trying, okay? And whether you vote for this or not, I'm trying to give you what you wanted and what's best for the people of Wood County. Give them the capital improvements they need and do it at the best cost available. That's it. That's the bottom line.
Supervisor Ashback?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I always was against borrowing in the first place. Are we accepting all the industries that we can have in Wood County? Is the North accepting every business we can come in? We can't operate on borrowed money without getting business in the town. And how many businesses are rejected that will give us a tax base still? And we're going to live high for 5 years here with this money, and what is it going to put on our next people? And we never go out to the general public to really see what their attitude is here. So there's a lot of different issues here that should have been approached in this. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Or at this point, you're ready to put the resolution, read the resolution, and put that on the floor. Supervisor Wagner, one minute.
No. Thanks for being patient and going through all this. I know it was difficult, but just wanted you to know that I appreciate that you're at least entertaining the idea of having a plan, having limits. I appreciate the fact that you listened to me. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, we have your page 35, at least in my packet. I'm not exactly sure where it is in the electronic version, but I'd ask the clerk to please read the resolution.
This will be Resolution 17-7-2, initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation promissory notes, fiscal note not to exceed $2.5 million.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the resolution. Is there a motion to that effect? A motion by Rozar, a second by Kramer. Discussion on the resolution. Discussion on the resolution. Supervisor Bryan.
I'd like to offer an amendment to this resolution to return to the $4.7 million that was originally requested.
Okay, we have a motion to amend to the $4.7 million originally recommended. Is there a second to that? I have a second by Zerflu. Discussion on the motion as amended. Let me go to the Finance Director, Mike.
Sorry to interrupt, but in the 4.7, just for clarity, that was about 4.4, 4.5 for highway and $300,000 for a couple of building projects in maintenance department.
So that doesn't include refinance?
No.
That wasn't what's on the resolution.
Right.
Peter, go to the microphone, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Recognizing and shaking my head.
I can hear it all the way up here.
The rattle carries. So anyway, when you're modifying this to 4.7 million, that is 4.7 million for highway. And so consequently, if you're not utilizing 4.7 million for highways, then it's going to be less. You can't use it for anything other than highway. I guess that's the point that I'm making. I think that in the past there have been borrowings that have been authorized for amounts and smaller amounts have been utilized, so that might be the case in this instance. But just so you know, your 4.7 is would be a cap, and it's just for highways. Thank you.
All right, so you're clear on that. This is for the amendment would be to go to 4.7 just for highways. Discussion on the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Supervisor Clendenin.
Didn't this start out at 4.6 or something like that? I guess that's been explained. I see it this way. I attend the highway meetings, and I know this is what they passed. I know it's been very difficult the last 3 prior years to get this because it requires a 3/4 vote. I voted the first time against it, but then I see that our roads do need fixing, and I'm mad at the state because they're not sending us enough money, whether it be the towns, villages, cities, or the county. So I just say, if this amendment does not go through, let's say this amendment goes through and the motion fails, is the other motion still available to us?
The main motion, if the amendment fails, yes. The main motion would stand. We go back to an unamended main motion resolution. So if the amendment fails, we go back to the resolution as presented. All right? So further discussion. Sorry, Bill, is that?
No, that's it.
All right. Further discussion on the amendment. Further discussion on the amendment. Supervisor Rozar.
Thank you. And I really don't mean to be so bullheaded, but somebody explain to me what the impact of this then is going to be if we change that number from 2.75 to 4.7. Can somebody review that just so I make sure that I understand what the impact does? Am I making myself clear?
Well, there's an impact if you change. It would depend if all resolutions passed or didn't pass in regards to how that would affect the levy. If you added that additional 2.2 to that particular resolution and still pass the other ones, I'm making assumptions. Michael, what does that do to your tax rate, the additional 2 million?
here's where I probably would need my calculator. The way that I've computed as far as just some rough figures, each $1 million of borrowing would probably require about $113,000 per year for debt service. So if you're adding $2 million to this resolution, you're probably going to require additional debt service of about $226,000. Each penny of taxes generates about $47,000. Here's where I'm going to need my calculator, because you'd have to take the $226,000 of higher debt service divided by the $47,000. So if that's 5 cents, yeah, it's going to be add about 5 cents to the 12 cents that we had earlier.
That's what I wanted to make sure we understood. Thank you.
Okay, further, Supervisor Kramer. Thank you, Chairman. I guess I'm a little confused on the wording. Is it the wording to be change it from 2.5 to 4.7 or keep 2.5 not to exceed 4.7? This is a resolution to open the bonding, not the actual bonding. So if we worded it to be 2.5 million not to exceed 4.7, when the actual bonding time comes, that would be the time to decide that. Am I correct on that, or am I off here a little bit?
That would be, the resolution would change the 2.5 to the 4.7, and it would be not to exceed as the language is in the original resolution.
Okay.
So it could be then again at the time it was issued, reduced.
Yes,
That was my point.
yes.
That's a simple explanation, I guess. Further discussion on the amendment. Further discussion on the amendment. All right, I'd ask you to wait. All right. Getting kicked under the table here. All right, I'd ask you to vote. A yes vote is to increase that to 4.7. A no vote is to leave it at the 2.5. That resolution passed 11-8. So the resolution as amended that we're now discussing is at the 4.7 million level. Back to the resolution as presented, well, as amended, I'm sorry. So discussion on that resolution as amended. Any further discussion on the resolution as amended? Okay, all right, seeing no further discussion, I would ask that you please vote. That resolution passed 14-5. 14-5. Jesus. Pardon?
Somebody's praying back there.
Pardon? That's a
Three-quarters.
It takes a three-quarter vote. So I'm sorry, the resolution fails in that respect. It fails. I apologize. Yeah, we can only have 4 no votes on that one. I was just looking at the totals up there, not even looking at the fact that we were at three-quarters.
So I have a question.
So now you got a really difficult question. Your question is, somebody from the prevailing side, one of those 5 no votes, could make the motion to reconsider, bring it back to the floor. A little complicated, but that could happen. Having done this, you are at no funding for the highways. There is no funding for. There is no funding, additional funding for capital improvement for the highways without a motion to reconsider. It doesn't automatically go back. Just so there's full understanding, I'm not telling you what to vote. I'm just saying it goes nowhere. There's no bonding issue. There's no money for highways without a motion to reconsider. The motion, Supervisor Casanova.
This is the motion, but I don't want to take on it. That's not my understanding of Robert's Rules of Order, Mr. Chairman. I believe that the original motion can still be brought back before this board at the 2.5.
I thought it could only be brought back
from a member of the prevailing side, which is the no vote in this instance. If I'll take your advice.
If you want to reconsider, which is what you're talking about, a motion to reconsider the 4.7, somebody could, one of the no votes could vote to, or move to reconsider. But that's a different motion than just addressing the issue, which under the open meetings law is before the board, so someone could say, I want that original resolution brought back before this board.
And that's what I asked. That's what I
That's not exactly what I'm saying, but I'm going with my attorney.
Yes.
Supervisor Hamilton.
I so move.
I'll second.
Bring the original resolution at 2.5 million to the floor. Is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
And I have a second by Supervisor Rosar, and I have affirmation by Clerk Counsel that that is a legitimate way to handle this process. All right, so we're back to the original resolution at 2.5 million. Discussion on that. Further discussion. Further discussion. I hear,
Mr. Chairman, I get the feeling that there's a feeling on the board that the 2.5 is too low, but 4.7 is too high. So I'll make a motion to raise it to 3.5 million, amend it to 3.5 million.
Am I still staying along here okay, Peter, without violating any rules? I have an amendment offered on the original resolution as presented to amend this to 3.5 million. Was there a second to that? A second by Supervisor Bride. All right, I guess we're good. Now we're dickering. All right, discussion at the $3.5 million level. We have discussion at the $3.5 million level. Any discussion? Supervisor Zerflug.
Any of Supervisor Wagner's increase now to 3.5 goes to highway, correct?
That's correct. Yes, for this specific purpose. Yes, sir.
I assume that that's what this resolution was about, just give it the same language.
Specifically highways. And again, to Supervisor Kramer's point, it means not to exceed. So at 3.5 million, any other additional discussion? Supervisor Clendon.
So this one is also a 3/4 vote, correct? No. I don't mean the amendment, but if this passes, then it's still a 3/4. So I don't know if this is to the amendment or not, but so if this don't pass today, is this road construction over that we're going to do for building roads? Is that it? Have we going to be stopping what we started 3 years ago? Is that the end of it?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so we have an amendment on the floor at 3.5 million. That's where the discussion is at this point, Supervisor Kramer.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Supervisor Clendeni's point is well taken. You know, 3 or 4 years ago, the roads were in bad shape, and it got you to the position where you had to, the board, I'm assuming, had to go to the $20 million funding, and you've done it the last 3 years. I get back to my point that you've been training for this marathon, you're stopping 100 yards shy. It doesn't make sense. You have a strategic plan, you've laid it out, you've got your roads in a good shape, how you can reduce your spending and continue down this plan. And you also look at what the implications are of 2020, 2021, and 2022. Anytime in business you can spend $1 and have a $1.02 returned or $1.20 or $1.40 returned is a significant opportunity. There's an opportunity cost here that we're nobody's talked about, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit. You need to look at the opportunity costs of what the ramifications of defeating this is. There are serious returns through the GTA, and there are also some opportunity costs of if you stop funding what you started, 3 or 4 years from now, you're going to be in the exact same place you were 3 or 4 years ago. The road's going to deteriorate, you're not building, you're not continuing to build. So because of how this plan was laid out 3 or 4 years ago and the funding that already occurs, I really don't see the reason to stop now. I can see reducing, but to stop would be a move that the town or the citizens of Wood County would not win today.
Okay, we're on discussion on the amendment. It's at 3.5 million. Supervisor Mahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As most of you know, I've supported highway bonding in the past. One of my questions questions, and I think it was brought up by Mr. Kramer, is I have not heard or seen anything about expense reductions. I harped on that last year, and I said I would not support structural deficits. That's going to be our next bonding issue. I will save the county here, and I will make an ass out of myself. I will change my vote on this, probably to pass this, but I will save my ammunition for the next one. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? Supervisor Zerflu?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The esteemed gentleman of the 4th and I had a rather spirited conversation today. And I think he just exemplified what's wrong with Washington, or what's not wrong with the county, but what's wrong with Washington and Madison. And I just want to give you an attaboy, Ed, for working together on this. Thank you.
Supervisor Clendenin.
I appreciate Supervisor Mahan's explanation as to a no vote, and really appreciate that. We voted no on something here because, you know, the last time we had a basketball game, you never give me the ball, so I'm not going to give you the ball this time. And that's the kind of thing. And with his explanation, that kind of clears it. And I too, we have this book, a 5-year plan. I would love to see a 5-year plan on cutting. I really would. Every supervisor could add to this little book that we would have on cutting. We don't like this. I don't like what they spent at this committee. And just put it in this book, and then we as a group can go over it. I like that idea, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we're still speaking to the amendment, 3.5 million. Any further discussion on that? All right. An affirmative vote is to
Amend it to
move this forward at the amended $3.5 million. I'd ask you to please vote.
Mr. Chairman, is it too late to have a question here?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry.
I need to ask a question.
Is it a clarification?
It is a clarification.
Go ahead and ask the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did not realize we were voting on the amended amount. I will not be voting yes on the amended amount. Do we still have the opportunity to go back to the original borrowing amendment? Or I mean the original borrowing resolution?
The question, if the amendment failed, it would go back to the original amount.
So it will go back to the original? Peter?
Yeah. All right. All right. The amendment doesn't need a supermajority, and that's why I was, you know, we're so convoluted in where we are in the process. So right now we have an amended resolution on the floor that will require a 3/4 vote at $3.5 million. Does that clarify it for everybody? Yes. We're at $3.5 million. We do need a 3/4 vote to pass that. Back to discussion on the resolution as amended at the $3.5 million level. Any further discussion? Supervisor Mahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hate to be a bore. I want to be perfectly clear on this. If this resolution fails, do we go back to the original resolution?
If somebody makes a motion.
According to Peter, yes, and I'm not going to argue with him. He's got a big piece of paper in his office that says, Juris Doctor. All right. Okay, any further discussion on the resolution as amended at the $3.5 million? Any further discussion? Okay, if not, please vote. Okay, we're back to 2.5 million. And the original resolution at that point. I'm sure that's going to happen, though. Supervisor Hamilton?
I make a motion.
I'll second it.
Supervisor Lightnum? Okay, I have a motion by Hamilton, a second by Lightnum.
I'd like to amend, no, just take away this microphone.
To return to the original resolution, which is at 2.5 million, and that will take a 3/4 vote to pass.
Is there any discussion on this number? No. Are you good? All right, I don't see any discussion here.
I'm exhausted.
No, 2.5 million.
I mean,
at the
at
original.
3/4.
Yeah. All right, so we're back to the original resolution as presented. Just going to take a 3/4 vote to pass it. Please vote. Failed again.
So we have no motion, no funding.
Okay.
You have no funding.
Yeah, no funding for the highway projects at this point in time. And this is where I was coming to before we got the final determination on this resolution. You would have to have a motion to reconsider from one of the members on the prevailing side of that resolution. Not seeing that, there is, just to clarify, and I'm not trying to belittle it, we're at the point where we have no resolution, we're moving forward, we have nothing to go on. Peter, you want to affirm that?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Only for highway funding.
That was for highway funding. All right, that brings me to page 36 in the packet. An initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation promissory notes not to exceed 2.75 million. Go ahead. It is your job.
This will be Resolution 17-7-3, initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation promissory notes, fiscal note not to exceed $2.75 million.
A motion by Hamilton and a second by Wagner. Discussion on this resolution. And you heard the background on this, in the presentation that started. So, any discussion on this resolution? Supervisor Kramer.
Thank you, Chairman. I maybe missed it. What is the repercussions of if we do not refinance? I know there was some talk.
4 cents.
600,000? And that is to be paid out over the first 1 year. It's a 1 year, 4 year. 600,000 split over 4 years. 3 years. I can't see that. Well, you had your thumb out like that.
Let me get Mr. Martin's going to the microphone.
It's the state trust fund loans for 5 years. And it's about 300, it was overstated just a little bit previously. Each year is about $375,000 of debt service over the 5 years.
It's about 8 cents. Supervisor Kramer.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. What is the current rate and what is the projected rate of where it would be? Do we have any way of knowing that?
The tax rate on the $375,000 is about 8 cents.
No, what we're borrowing from the state from.
Oh, 3% per year.
And the projected refinance rate is?
It's open to the competitive market, but recently we've been below 2%.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion on this resolution? Supervisor Clendon?
I say I'm glad somebody said why they're voting no. I'm going to tell you why I'm voting no on this, and a lot of people aren't going to like this. I think this could have all been done in June and in July. I think what we're doing is on the executive committee is trying to confuse a lot of supervisors here. How should you vote for it and how should you not vote for it? I'm voting no on it. I think when it comes down to a 3/4 vote like this, everybody counts. But it don't count when you go to a committee meeting and have something to say and you're just kind of pushed aside for it. So I'm voting no on this resolution. Thank you.
Further discussion? Further discussion? All right, I ask Supervisor Mahan.
He didn't get the ball at the last game.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I might I better speak on this considering I pretty much said I was going to save my ammunition. So I can't support this resolution. What I see today here is without seeing serious expense cuts by departments, I can't support a $1 million undesignated capital expenditures. I'm not going to give the executive committee a blank check for $1 million and hope that they spend it well. I can't support that without seeing the other side of the equation. There's always, in any budget, there's always both sides. There's expenses and costs and revenue. And I haven't seen that act. I've made several requests on the floor at budget time in years past. I haven't seen the effects of any of that, or it haven't been even taken seriously on any of them. So I can't support this at this time. I think what we're doing is we're setting up a perpetual, I understand the plan, and we're setting up a way to perpetually fund operational deficits, the way I see it. I know you can explain it any way you want, but basically that's what it is. We're going to perpetually borrow $3.5 million a year. That's wishful thinking, I believe. That's the $3.5 million mark perpetually. So I will not be supporting this.
Yeah, and just a clarification, so people that are maybe watching this or that's, executive committees don't set departmental budgets. I want to make that very clear.
County boards do.
The oversight committees set the budgets for the departments. Supervisor Wagner.
Yeah, so Dan, that's part of what I wanted to say to Mr. Mahan. You're not giving the executive committee a blank check. What we're doing is telling the departments, this is your budget, this is what you must live within. And it is now up to the individual oversight committees to keep their budgets or keep their capital budget requests from their departments within that limit. So basically, we're asking for a limit, and that's all we're doing. Now, there is no blank check here. I have tried to explain this to several supervisors. They say, well, what project are you funding here? Well, that's up to you. That's up to your committee. That's up to you. You have to choose that for the departments that you oversee. I don't know how I can explain it any simpler than that, but this is not giving the executive committee a blank check, not by any means. So basically, I'm going to support this only because, we got things in that book that I held up, and Mr. Glendanian also held up. There are things in there like, the squad cars are in there, that's been mentioned. There's the transformer for the courthouse that's in there. Those are things that are capital projects because it's equipment that'll last more than 10 years. Supposedly 10 years anyway. But anyway, that's the kind of thing that we don't want to use our operating cash for. We want to use the prudent use of debt to get. That's it.
Supervisor Rosa, then Supervisor Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to take issue with the fact that our departments do not make cuts. If you remember, the Health and Human Services Committee last operating budget made some pretty serious cuts that we took a big hit for. Now, we're always looking for efficiencies. We're always talking to our department heads about doing things cost effectively and efficiently, prioritizing the things, what's our return on investment if we do things. But I'm just telling you, if we don't borrow for capital projects, our operational costs are going to be cut. We've already alluded to the fact that the Health and Human Services is a huge percentage of our budget. We took a huge hit last year with some controversial cuts that we made, and we'll do it again because we have the intestinal fortitude to do that. But it isn't going to be pretty, I can tell you that. We also have wonderful buildings here that need to be maintained. We've got some difficult decisions to do about whether to invest some monies into some capital projects that I think will be of benefit to the county as a whole. But if those things have to go by the wayside, Supervisor Kramer's right. We're going to be right back where we were several years ago without using debt prudently. And so to say that we haven't taken some cuts, when you talk about wages and health insurance, $2 million, we've got to cut operations to come up with that $2 million. And that may mean people, it may mean the services that we provide to people, and it's going to happen. I repeat again, the Health and Human Services Committee has got the intestinal fortitude to make the cuts that we made. We did it last year, and we'll do it again. we'd like not to have to go through that again. And I encourage people to think about long-term what effect this is going to have. Supervisor Wagner, you did a marvelous job with laying out what the overall picture was, and I appreciate that. And I'm just telling you, we're going to take some cuts that the public's not going to like if we have to dip into operations to fund some maintenance of buildings and things that need to be done. Thank you.
Supervisor Kramer, then I'll go back to Supervisor Mahan.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess can you give some clarity to myself and maybe some of the other board members that are questioning this resolution? To me, is two almost separate issues. We're talking about refinancing the 1.7 to avoid a $600,000 penalty. We've kind of tied it to $1 million worth of bonding and lumped it together. Was there any discussion as to separating these? Because I agree that we should, the 1.75, we should refinance and not take the $600,000 hit. But I agree with Supervisor McCon here too, with the situation of where is this $1 million going? Supervisor Wagner, you say that it's going to go to the committees to allocate that. Well, how is that process, for my clarity, because I do not know, how is that process implemented? Is there percentages based on budget? Is it percentages, or is it just they get in a room, lock the door, and whoever wins the arm wrestling contest gets it? I mean, what is the process of how is that allocated at that level?
Supervisor Wagner?
The committees will be reviewing the entire budgets, as the capital portion of it with everything else. If one committee is, what they've got to do is prioritize their capital projects and say that we want to fund this, but we don't want to fund this, and here's why we want to do it, and here's why we don't want to do it, the other one or whatever. When that comes to the final budget thing, I think that comes to the exec committee, and they come before the exec and make their case, and the exec will make it fit into that $1 million too. But they won't come in with asking for $2 or $3 million. Well, I think one of them I saw was like 1.3 million, I believe. One of the requests was at 1.3 billion. And, but they will know they can't make a request for all 1.3 million if the limit is only $1 million.
Let me follow up, Doug, and then I'll come right back to you. Okay, Supervisor, you have a follow-up to that? Yeah. Doug, I'll come right back to you then, okay? I'll even follow up, and then I'll get to you, City Manager.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I guess that still doesn't answer my question completely. You're telling me the executive committee will allocate those funds based on prioritizing from the department heads?
Yeah. From oversight.
Not from the department heads, from the committee chairs, from the committees themselves.
So it's an executive committee decision, not a board decision?
The final budget is the executive committee's decision, but they get to tell it. We get to hear their case about what they need and why they need it. The final budget is a full board decision. Yeah, but eventually the full board gets either ratify or change.
So the million would get in a way put into the full budget through programs through each department or committee. Is that right?
If you do it here, that will be the budget, period. Nothing to exceed that, right? Unless when the executive committee brings the budget up and you disagree with it and you want to add more to it, you can do that. But
I guess I was just looking for
away from it too.
My point would just be the clarity and the transparency of where that specific $1 million levy went.
You will know by the time it gets to the exec committee, you will know everything that everybody has requested. You will know absolutely everything.
I guess, not to beat a dead horse, but this is an additional levy, and I would like to be able to see where the additional levy went, not to just add to the levy and get kind of spread out. I'd like to see where, if this would pass, where that additional levy went to, allocated by committee or department. That's my only point.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, that's a true statement, though, that does occur. And again, I think you alluded to the language in an earlier one. This is a not to exceed resolution. Supervisor Mahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, my apologies to Supervisor Rosar. I forgot, and in fact, I commented last year. I believe the cuts that the Human Services Department did make were drastic, were appreciated, and I encourage other departments to do the same. So my apologies there. I was implying by the blank check remark that the final decision rests with the executive. I know how the process works, and I did not mean any offense by that, but along with Supervisor Kramer, I want to see where the money's spent. Let's be honest here, the executive committee holds the reins on that. And you're going to decide who gets that $1 million of capital expenditures. You're going to decide which committee gets it, or which departments get it, and which departments don't. And that's what I was implying. Thank you.
It is a recommendation that comes forward through the budget hearing and at the vote on the budget. A fact of the matter is, though, every committee chairman sits on the executive committee. So as things are fluid and things change, what might be a pressing need today, in 2 months is not the most pressing. Something fails, additional dollars have to be allocated on the Department of Money. But there's several kicks at the can here as you move forward. I see Supervisor Zuflu with this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I read an article a while ago, I don't know if it was in legal Wisconsin municipalities or if it was in the Wisconsin County Associations. And it was about what attracts people to municipalities. And the number 1 and 2 things were recreation parks and highways, good streets to drive on, good infrastructure. And this is the second year in a row now that the HERC committee has taken a serious hit. I share Mr. Kramer's concern about the $1 million, and where does it say here, in such years and in such amounts, yes, that scares me. However, what scares me more is I will be now supporting this resolution. I was going to vote against it because I've just been sitting here. If we don't refinance on the trust funds, we're going to be adding unnecessary costs to the taxpayers. And just because I'm in a snit about losing the previous election or issue, I'm not going to continue down that path. So I'll be supporting this for the reason of not having to add 8 cents, 12 cents, whatever the cents was, to the tax rolls on people. Thank you.
All right. Further discussion? Any further discussion on the resolution? Supervisor Winch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question would be is why these two numbers are in the same resolution? Why can we not vote on the debt reduction, or the refinancing as one issue and $1 million is another issue?
Well, I'm guessing you could, but the answer is when you're going to bond council, when you're going to bond for it, if you do it in a single issue, it's a lot less expensive than if you do it in 2 issues. Would that be true? Correct. I'm looking at Joe Murphy, I think shake his head yes.
Well, we've got this other issue we got to work through, so if we're going to do that, if we made an amendment here to take the $1 million out and vote at it on a later date with another combination. It makes sense to refinance, but I share the same feelings as the other supervisors about not knowing what we're spending the $1 million on. Thank you.
I'm back, I guess, still to the discussion on the resolution as presented. I have not had an amendment in a second. Supervisor Curry?
Well, the discussion, thank you, Mr. Chairman, the discussion about splitting it, I'll try to make a motion. I think they should be split. I think we should have 2 votes, one on the refinancing and one on the $1 million for capital projects.
I don't believe I can split the resolution. I could certainly amend the resolution as presented to take out part of it. In other words, amend the dollar amount. But I don't think it's proper to split it into 2 separate votes, which in essence does the same thing.
I think we should vote on the refinancing, and to amend the motion to vote just on the refinancing.
So you want to amend the motion to 1.75 million, period. I guess it doesn't really matter what comes into that. for the refinancing to the state trust fund loans. All right, I have an amendment offered by Supervisor Curry. Do I have a second to that amendment? I have a second by Supervisor Lightman. All right, so now we are at, well, we've got to vote on that. Let's have a discussion on that. All right, discussion on the amendment as proposed. Supervisor Rosa.
So if we were to remove that $1 million of capital project funding from this resolution, and since we now have no money to fund any highway projects, it would be possible then to bring another resolution back that would include some highway funding plus $1 million or whatever we come up with for capital improvement project funding. Is that a correct assumption?
We're talking someday.
Well, not someday, soon.
Well, that's my point.
Okay. Not today, but yeah, a future resolution.
And we have to have budgets done, but the answer is yeah, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, I'm still discussing the amendment, which is to remove the $1 million for capital projects from this particular resolution. Is there further discussion on removal of the $1 million from this resolution? There's no further discussion. We're voting on the amendment, which only requires a majority vote. An affirmative vote is to remove the $1 million. A yes vote is to remove the $1 million.
Oh my goodness.
Passed 10 to 9. Okay, we are now to the resolution as amended, which is strictly the 1.75 million borrowing in effect to replace the state trust fund loan. So, discussion on the resolution as amended. Supervisor, not supervisor. Finance Director Michael Martin.
I can make certain legends, but I'm not going to learn a lot as I get closer to
That mic is not on. Can you see if you get it on, sir?
It's retired.
You might have burnt the battery on.
It's too late. I did learn something this morning, talking with our financial advisor, Joe Murray from Springstead. Now that this resolution is only to refinance the state trust fund loan, it no longer requires a 3/4 vote. For that purpose, as far as a borrowing resolution to just refinance state trust fund loans, does not require a supermajority, simple majority.
So no new money, no supermajority. Pretty simply, Joe got ahead of you. All right, so when we get to this, we have a discussion on this resolution, which now has been amended at only the 1.75 million. So we only need a majority vote to pass. Is there additional discussion on the 1.75? Additional discussion on the 1.75? I'm losing track of where we are. All right, I see no further discussion. We're down to the 1.75. I ask you to go to the board. And please vote. I see all green. That passed unanimously. So where we are today is just a quick summation that while we're on page 36 in the packet. We have no monies allocated for continuing the highway program. We have no monies allocated for capital improvements. And I think you need to go back to the drawing board, all of the committees, including the executive committee, and figure out how you're going to do this. Peter, did you have something you wanted to say or state?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry to step out. I had to go to court for a few minutes. I'm still competent. Anyway, sorry, that was a joke.
We're sorry, it was a joke too.
Yes. Sometimes in these kind of proceedings where you have a very close vote like you had earlier, sometimes the governmental entity will take a break and they will discuss things with the no votes to consider, ascertain whether or not they want to move to reconsider. I'm not saying you need to do that. I'm just saying it's one of the procedural things that sometimes is utilized.
It does happen. It allows for discussion, and it has to happen at this meeting.
As an old man, I'd like a break.
We need a break.
Not trying to sway this either way, but we are at 11:45. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? 10-minute break.
10.
return from a brief recess. And Peter Castanels is right, and by Robert's Rules of Order, that often occurs when they take a break to further discuss the action. A motion to reconsider has to occur on the same day as which the original motion happened. And I understand in discussion that I have two members who voted in the majority on that, and that happened to be the side that had 5, have decided to reconsider. The original 5 were Supervisors Ashbeck, Fisher, Winch, Clendenning, and what was my last one? And Curry, Supervisor Curry. So, with that being said, I would entertain a motion to reconsider the original resolution, which was the $2.5 million promissory note on the highway project. Supervisor Ashbeck?
Yeah, we'll go right now, yes.
And your motion is to? To reconsider?
Right.
Okay. Do I have a second? And a second can come from anybody on the floor. I have a second by Supervisor Holcamp. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to reconsider. The motion to reconsider is a simple majority vote. Need a majority of the body present to bring this back to the floor. Is there any discussion on the motion to reconsider? It's debatable to the point in which the issue is debatable is actually what it says, which makes no sense. All right. All right, so we'll go to the board on the motion to reconsider. If you want to reconsider, if your vote is yes. If you don't, it is no. I have a feeling I know what this is going to say.
Green seems to be our favorite color.
Okay, we have an 18-to-1 vote to reconsider the issue. This brings us back to the original resolution, and I'm going to have the clerk reread that resolution.
This is still Resolution 17-7-2, initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation promissory notes. Fiscal note not to exceed $2.5 million.
Okay, I have a motion by Hamilton. I have a second by Kramer. Discussion on the resolution. Supervisor Roser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. I have a couple of issues with this. Number one, I feel strongly that $2.5 million is not enough. And number two is we still have capital project funding that needs to be discussed. If we don't wrap those two borrowing issues into one resolution, it's going to cost us more money. So if we borrow some from highway, which I don't think is enough, and then we have to bond again for capital projects, we're talking about two bonding resolutions. And that will cost us more than if we do just one bonding resolution. So I feel strongly enough about this that I am going to vote no, because I would like for us to save money by only bringing one resolution forward. And then the question I asked is, do we have time to bring that forward?
Yeah, let me, real quickly, the answer basically to this, short answer is no. You have a single resolution that was brought back for reconsideration, and that is strictly the highway funding at the $2.5 million level. So you can't wrap that or roll that into something else.
But if this resolution were to fail upon reconsideration, another resolution could be brought back next month that would you have to do transportation funding by itself.
You have to take this resolution on its face as it stands.
But you could have a resolution that included transportation funding and capital project funding, couldn't you?
I guess you could wrap those all together and call it a different kind of resolution, but I sure want a legal perspective on that. That's getting pretty complicated.
But we just did it. We did the refinancing. We did two issues in another, which didn't work out very well, I understand.
You have to take reconsideration of those other issues, and we don't have that at this point.
Okay. Okay.
I'll make the motion.
So I have to think a minute. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Further discussion? Supervisor Winch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I take bore you with the details again. I'd just like to explain why I'm against this borrowing. I think we're backing ourselves into a corner not by ourselves, but by the state. Everybody pays into the transportation fund at the state level. That money comes back to the counties, etc., or municipalities in general transportation needs. Okay? What's happened is that the cost of roads have gone up, etc., so the funding we're receiving is not covering the cost. And the state will never change as long as we are willing to be the sugar daddy for the state by funding what they should be funding. That'll never change. I don't know that I can live long enough so that it will change, but I know for sure they won't change as long as we keep paying for what they should be paying for. That's my whole point. The other thing is that, Doug and I just had a discussion one time about this GTA that why they gave it up today, I had it yesterday, brief form. They're telling me that an increase in GTA will cover at least the cost of the interest. But the way I added it up, it doesn't come out that way. We're still short. The fact remains that we still have to repay the principal. That's an issue that should be paid by the state. So I don't know how we get to the bottom of this. I understand the frustration. I understand that we need to have good roads, but somehow we have to get this corrected. We can't keep doing this. Because if we're going to borrow monies, as an example, for highways, we won't have money for capital improvements. You can't have both. Somehow we have to get this corrected. Thank you. I'm debating this in my mind if I should compromise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Raining on your parade.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Give you one more shot.
Oh, this is so hard.
Further discussion. This takes a supermajority vote, 3/4 of the board, and we're at $2.5 million. A yes vote is to approve the $2.5 million bonding issue. Please vote. We passed that resolution on a 16-3 vote. A 16-3 vote. All right, we still got some work to do next month on some other stuff, from a budget perspective, but we'll continue to work on it. And I encourage, I implore those committees, those committee chairs, like was stated earlier, Mr. Mahan stated it, Ms. Rosar did, there have been significant cuts over time. We need to continue to look in that direction. I know the sheriff isn't here, but he's cut in excess of $1 million out of his budget over the years on an ongoing basis. So we'll continue to do that and we'll move forward. So we are now at page 37 in this packet.
I'm going to give you, everybody's going to be probably pretty happy about this.
I told Chad he's doing the special order of business on the annual report on the Park and Forestry Department next month.
It was his suggestion, so when you see him, kudos to Chad. All right, Health and Human Services Committee, June 15th, their minutes, page 37 and 38. Same committee, their minutes of June 22nd on 39 and 40. The Board of Directors of North Central Community Action on 41 and 42. The Health Department monthly letter of comments and updates on pages 43 through 45. Report from Edgewater Haven on 46. Well, Joel steps out. Joel Murray, I really want to thank you for your presence here today. You helped a lot on the technical aspects of this, so thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Veteran Service Officers Report on 47, 48. Director of Brewing's report for the Human Services Department for June, beginning on 49, running through 50 and 51. And then that brings me to a resolution in the packet on page 52.
This will will be Resolution 17-7-4 to amend the 2017 budget for Veterans Relief with a transfer of available appropriations from fund balance. Fiscal note, no additional cost to Wood County. The additional appropriations needed in the Veterans Relief account is available in a non-lapsing fund balance, and the adjustment to the budget totals $4,000.
And a motion by Fisher and a second by Fire right out of the box on that one. Any discussion on this? Any discussion on this resolution? Please vote. Resolution passed 19-0. Minutes of the Wood County Public Safety Committee meeting. I think this mic's going in and out a little bit here. Beginning on page 53 and running through page 57. So 53, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Get any notes there? The Humane Officers Report from April 24th to May 21st on 58. The monthly report from Wood County Coroner Garham on 59. An update on the Crime Stoppers program on page 60. Another brief memo from Sheriff Reichert on page 61 and 62. Wood County jail population numbers, beginning on page 63 and running through page 67. Starting to see those come down a little bit. And then on page 68, we have another resolution, this one brought forth by the Public Safety.
This will be Resolution 17-7-5 to cancel stale dated checks as recommended by the auditors. Said checks are from the Wood County Jail inmate account as per office of the Wood County Sheriff. Fiscal note, as per resolution, total to be canceled is $532.96.
Motion by Zerflu, second by Hamilton. Discussion on the resolution. Any discussion on the resolution? Please vote. And that resolution passed 19-0. Minutes of the Scene Committee from Tuesday, June 20th on page 69. Their minutes from their regular meeting, July 5th, beginning on page 70. And it runs through page 76. I'll give you a minute to go through those, 70 through 76. There was an interesting memo there on 76 in regard to some of the correspondence and some of the comments made on the board floor and the answer from the Ledge Council. Some of those questions were asked of us. Hopefully they're answered there. Page 77 begins the monthly comments from the Land and Water Conservation Department, beginning with Director Richard Fennings on page 77 and running through page 81. We have their activity reports for that department. Were included in those page numbers. UW Extensions, again, monthly letter, pages 82 through 86. 82 to 86. Monthly letter comments from Planning and Zoning, beginning with Director Rubergs, page 87, running through page 90. 87 through 90. The Economic Development Board meeting of May 4th on page 91 and 2, and I guess 3 also. Central Wisconsin Economic Development, beginning on page 94, their meeting from Thursday, March 9th on 94. Minutes of the Judicial and Legislative Committee June 20th meeting on 95. Page 97, their regular monthly meeting minutes, beginning on 97, 98, and 99. Criminal Justice Task Force minutes of March 22nd on 100 and 101. Child Support Agency update for July on 102. Corporate Counsel
council's monthly update from July at 103. Notice of injury and claims on 104 and 105. And then that brings me to the resolution on page 106 brought forward by the Judicial and Legislative Committee.
This will be Resolution 17-7-6 to oppose legislation to repeal Wisconsin's prevailing wage law. Fiscal note, none.
I have a motion by Hamilton, a second by LaFontaine. We are on the floor. We have discussion on the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, please vote. That resolution passed 13-6. 13-6. Second resolution brought forth from the Judicial and Legislative Committee on page 107.
This will be Resolution 17-7-7 to support the creation of a bipartisan procedure at the state level for the preparation of legislative and congressional redistricting plans. Fiscal note, none.
Motion by Hamilton, second by LaFontaine. Discussion on this resolution. Any discussion on the resolution? We've warned everybody out. All right. Go to the board, please vote. And that resolution passed 18-1. This resolution, I think, conforms pretty closely to one we passed a couple of years ago and sent down. And I can tell you it's also on the platform of the Wisconsin County Association, but I guess it reiterates that fact. Minutes of the Highway Infrastructure Recreation Committee beginning on 108 and running through page 113. 108 to 113. Departmental reports, beginning on 114, with Dennis Cornell's, going through 118, 114 through 118. Park revenue summary was page 118. You want to see what that is year over date, or year over year to date. The Central Wisconsin State Fair Board of Directors minutes on June 19th on page 119. Supervisor Pollack, I'm sorry, Dennis, I did not see you.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one comment here on page 119. In the very last paragraph, there's just first names again. There aren't any last names, at least out in this report. And just wondering if the summary lady couldn't contact the secretary or something, just so that last names could be included in this report. Thank you.
Are you talking on the resume submitted part, Dennis?
Yes, yeah, page 119 on the Central Wisconsin State Fair, the very last paragraph.
We can check, but oftentimes those will be left off because there might be a situation where somebody's leaving a position to take one up with us and apply, and they wouldn't want them on their workshop.
Their last names are on the present above at the top.
Well, they are on another report, but I'm just saying on this particular report, they are not.
Yeah, oftentimes when we do leave those off for that particular purpose. But thank you. Make sure we, I guess they're listed, like I said, once at the top. I didn't even look at that.
Yeah, they're at the top in public present or whatever.
And at the bottom. Supervisor Ashbeck, will you mention that at the next meeting? That if possible, not violating anybody's right to privacy, that we get those on there. Okay, the Central Wisconsin State Fair Board of Directors special meeting minutes from June 26th on 120. Minutes of the McMillan Memorial Library Board of Trustees on 121 and 122. Page 123, South Central Library System Board of Trustees. And then on 124, the System Director's Report. We're going to skip the Park and Forestry annual report. Chad had another meeting he had to be at today. And Ruben, I'm not going to forget you. Why don't you come on forward and give us a river block update, which might include an update as to what we're doing in here too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon.
Yes. That's what you would have to say.
Me too. So the message from the last couple months, I guess the good news is the bulk of the project is complete at River Block. It went well. We are still under budget, which is great news. The work that the subcommittee has done over the last several months, deferring portions of the project and making sure that we're not spending unnecessary dollars, has allowed us to finish with approximately $200,000 today that we still have in the borrowed money for that project, which is good news because we're finished. We're basically moved in, aside from one more group of people from Human Services. But there's some of those smaller items that were deferred that the committee continues to look at that we can potentially accomplish with those dollars. So we still have to pay the highway department for the Elks lot that was recently finished and striped. And then I guess from there, what's left unused in the end will go back towards debt service. As far as just a little bit of what we're doing in the courthouse here, the money that you guys as a board approved last year for dispatch, for IT, for the data center has been getting used this year. The projects are going well. Dispatch is a little bit behind on their move than what we were hoping for, but in the next few weeks they'll be getting their new equipment set up and getting tested and getting trained on their equipment for their consoles, and they'll be moving in. If you haven't seen it, stop and talk to me. We'll show you around. Shortly they'll be occupied in their new space, and probably you guys will get a chance to take a look. So that's great news for dispatch. Along with that, the infrastructure for the county network for the shared data center and the updates we made last year to our generator are going to allow us to have less downtime, hopefully no failures of the 911 system in the future. That's our goal, and that's what we're working hard to achieve. So things are going well. We do have more active construction. It's been a very busy year. This morning, the alarm that went off is due to construction. There's an area that was being worked in. The guys working there didn't deactivate the smoke heads. They didn't see them there. We normally check with them. So we missed one. We apologize for that. It's a good exercise for us. Our system works. We know that. So that's all I have, unless there's any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any questions from the floor?
We have a meeting right after this. Maybe you said that.
I did. There was a meeting scheduled for 10:30 for following county board, so we'll be headed down to room 115 as soon as we finish. Short meeting. Yes, very short.
Supervisor Hamilton?
What about that, you talked about that, having an announcement system set up, so something like that, they could go on an announcement system?
One of the things we've talked about in the past is having, a building-wide intercom system so we can be alerted to actually what is occurring. And then I walked down to the end of the hall and told the judges we were clear because they don't get the announcement. So we'll work on that. Quick plug. Our park system, specifically out of Lake Wazeecha, is put on display this year. It is the premier water ski site in the world. The largest water ski tournament in the world is happening out there. There will be tens of thousands of people in attendance. They handle it well. It could not be done without their cooperation and without hundreds of volunteers. And in this room, Mr. Clendenning is running out there every year volunteering. So my point is, if you have the opportunity, there is no admission fees. It is free. And if you want to take the opportunity to see our Parks Department, what they can do, take a trip out there. That's this weekend. It starts actually tomorrow. It goes into Friday where team competition starts and runs through Sunday. So take advantage. Supervisors are full.
And as a member of the HERD committee, I just want you to know, Mr. Chairman, we do all that despite having our budget cut last year.
Well said. But you still all right. Anything else that needs to come before this board? I would entertain a motion to adjourn. By Lockhart, second by Hank. All in favor, signify by